Hi guys, and welcome to part 2 and in fact the final part of the Star Wars Revell Snap-Fit AT-RT all-terrain recon transport in its repaint in a sort of Russian-esque camo scheme, as you can see. I kind of wasn't feeling this one hugely. As I was doing it, I sort of expected to do more with this one, but I wasn't really feeling any specific direction with it. So I went with a fairly simple, straightforward build. One of the things that put me off was the fact that this figure, being a sort of rubbery kind of figure, it meant that once paint had been applied to it, you had to handle it very, very carefully, because obviously being very flexible, paint could flake off. And because of the nature of it, as you can see, if I can focus on the figure for you, the seam lines of the figure itself, let me get a pointy implement. The seam lines on the figure, on the arms, down the side of the helmet, etc., are very, very prominent. And with it being made of this sort of rubbery, flexible material, it's practically impossible to clean those up, no matter what you try. I've tried file, I've tried sanding stick, I've tried the knife blade, and it's just not working at all. And I have actually modified the backpack a small amount by slicing bits off, but again, because of the type of material, it's quite obvious you can't actually clean it up and get it nice and smooth. So I was very disappointed with that, and I had planned a few modifications for the figure, but went very minimal, and I cut off the visor that was shielding the goggles, because one corner of it was bent down. So unfortunately, again, because of the type of material, it wasn't simply a case of warming it up and bending it back into shape. It would have been permanently bent down. So that's the reason that's been cut off. And as I say, I reshaped the backpack just to make it look a bit more backpack and a bit less rocket pack, as it were. The AT-RT itself was given a, let me focus again on this. There we go. The AT-RT itself was put into 3 sub-assemblies. The legs, the main body, and then the front section with the gun. And it was painted in a base colour of a dark green, kind of similar to the tank, the T-34, which you can see there, which is currently having its tracks glued, and we're getting towards the sort of latter stages of that, so there'll be an update on that shortly, hopefully. So it was painted with a base coat of the green, and then I went with a lighter green, and then I went with an almost sort of yellow, as you can see in just a few bits like round here. And I did the same on the figure, and because I was going with a Russian kind of theme, rather than going with black for the inner portions of the armour, I went with brown to give it a sort of a brown leathery look, as you would find on Russian armour vehicles with sort of brown leathery things. I don't know, maybe as well, in my mind, I kind of associate that with Russian things, because I've had numerous Russian cameras with brown leather cases, and I don't know if it's maybe because of that I sort of associate that with Russian built things. So that's why I went with the brown anyway on the gloves and the sort of inner bits, to try and make it look like it was in a uniform, which would be a brown material with the armour over the top. Then this was done all over the model, top to bottom, and then a few sort of bits of chipping were done with a steel colour paint. A couple of decals from the T-34 kit, the Red Star and the 116 numbering, which I've also used on the tank, as it happens. Oops, you can see there, were used on the sides here. I was wanting to put some Russian wording, some Cyrillic letters from the T34 decals, but unfortunately there wasn't a single part of this this walker that was adequately large enough to do that. So that didn't happen. And then the other thing that I did do is the exhaust port, or whatever you would call it, down here. I painted in a sort of rust brown colour and did a little bit of dry brushing with a silvery kind of colour. As I say, I've really not gone too mad with this at all, because I just really wasn't feeling any sort of inspiration with it. After I'd done the initial camo, I kind of expected to do an awful lot more, but the figure put me off, and once I'd got it all together, I just really didn't know what else to do with it. So I'm a bit disappointed myself with this, but you know, it's okay. It's okay for what it is. It's a cheap, fun kit, and it'll do. And I also added a little bit of burnt sienna around some of the metal bits to represent a sort of hint of rust. And that's pretty much where we're at. So what I'm going to do just now is pop this on the Wii turntable, and we'll be back in a moment with a spinny round and a little bit of gentle music for your viewing pleasure.